Hi, Denise. So one of the most important things to understand in this problem is how this equation or this function is written in function notation. So sometimes when you see f of x, it may seem kind of confusing, but just think of f of x as the output value, or sometimes we think of that as the y value. So if I were to graph this equation, I'm going to graph it at different x values. So these x values, we call these our input values. And then the output values, which is y or f of x, this is your output value. Okay, so basically f of x is just another fancy way of saying y. So I'm going to write that on the vertical axis on the graph here on the right, and I'm going to put x on the horizontal axis. So I can graph this equation by evaluating the function at different input values, at different values for x. So in this particular problem, we're asked to evaluate things like what is f of 0, or what is f of 2, or what is f of -1? So this question is basically asking us, what is y when x is 0? This notation, f of 2, is asking, what is y when x is 2? And then the last notation, f of -1, is saying, what is y when x is -1? So to figure out what those y values are, or to figure out what these f of 0, f of 2, and f of -1 equal, we have to plug in each x value, so 0, 2, and -1, we have to plug it into the equation anywhere where we see x. So let's go ahead and do f of 0. So for f of 0, right, so when x is 0, anywhere in the equation where I see x, I'm going to substitute that with 0. So then here we have 10 plus the square root of 2. And 10 plus the square root of 2 is approximately 11.414. So f of 0 is equal to 11.414. This basically means, this is the point. This means when x is 0, y is 11.414, or that's the point, the ordered pair, 0, 11.414. So I can graph this point on the graph. I'll use red here to graph it. So when x is 0, I'm going to go up. This is about 11.414. I'm going to graph that point there. So that's that first point. Now let's evaluate f of 2. So same thing, f of 2, 10 plus the square root of 2 plus 2. So square root of 2 plus 2 is the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. So that's 10 plus 2, which is 12. So f of 2 is 12. So that's the same thing as saying when x is 2, y is 12, or we can write it as the ordered pair, 2, 12. And now I'm going to graph this in blue on the graph. So when x is 2, 12 is somewhere up here. So I'm going to go up. So there's that point right there. Okay, and then we keep going. Excuse me, still have a cough. Okay, so we can keep going. And now let's evaluate the last one. I'll squeeze it in the bottom here. F of -1. So f of -1, that's 10 plus the square root of -1 plus 2, which is 10 plus the square root of, so 2 minus 1, that's 1, okay? And then the square root of 1 is just 1, so 10 plus 1 is 11. So this gives us the ordered pair when x is -1, y is 11. So then I'm going to plot this on the point. Let me see if I can find a different color. I'll do it in purple. So -1 is over here, and I'm going to go up to about just a little bit underneath 11.4. So that's 11. So I would plot that point right there. And if we started to evaluate more and more points, you'll see that eventually we'll get more and more points, and then we can actually graph the function and see what it looks like. And you'll see that as we graph it and evaluate more x values into the equation, we'll get more y values, meaning we'll get more and more points. And then if we connect all those points, we'll actually see the graph of this equation. So I hope that helps.